We have this like running joke here that it's like if you play a show in Charlottetown, it's like the best documented show you'll ever have in your life because there's like 5 photographers to every show, so they have a picture.
Wow.
Like,
Okay. Good to go.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, Brett, thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing some stories, some thoughts. For the people at home who might not know who you are, can you just give a quick intro about kind of how you're involved in DIY music and where you're from?
So I'm Brett Sanderson. I'm from Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, the other side of the country.
Right.
I'm involved with a group called Charlottetown Punk and Hardcore Shows, and basically we're just like a DIY group. It's basically just me and my girlfriend, and we just run all ages shows in Charlottetown, book, all kinds of bands, lots of punk bands, and like hardcore punk, D-beat, that kind of stuff mostly. That's a lot of the bands we book anyway, but we book a lot of like younger bands from here, bands with, teenagers in them. We try to really incorporate the youth as much as we can. So yeah, we've got a lot of kids here starting bands, and it's really cool to give them a spot to play and not have to wait till they're 19 years old to play at a bar. So.
Right. Yeah. And that's honestly super exciting because if anyone knows, where we're based in Calgary, like we have a very young scene. There's kids, it was shocking when I first moved here and talking to kids, and they're like, well, like I'm still in like grade 10 or whatever it is. So, that's
we've got some in grade 8 and 9, I think, coming out right now. And like they're 14 years old starting bands. Like it's pretty great.
Yeah. So, I always like to get a little bit of context about how people got into like more underground kinds of music, whether it's hardcore punk, what have you. So could you kind of give me a little backstory on like maybe the first couple records or CDs that kind of pushed you in that direction, or what were those formative moments for you?
Let me think. I grew up in PEI. There's not as a huge like scene compared to like we were to go to a bigger city or anything, but there are people that listen to music. So whenever I was in, I think grade 7, I would have been like 12 or 13 years old. I lived in a trailer park, and there was a guy in that trailer park who was like really like, he really is the one that got me into going to like shows and stuff like that. But I had some other friends as well that listened to like death metal and stuff like that. And I was listening to like teeny bop or pop punk and all that stuff at the time. And then they were like, oh, you should try listening to like Cannibal Corpse and Slipknot. And I was like, oh, this sounds all right. I'll give it a shot. And those were really like kind of those people and like the bands they showed me and like the things that they got me involved in were kind of the reason I still do what I do today. So I think I was 13 years old when I went to my first show in like 2007.
Right. And you're born and raised from PEI?
Yeah, I've lived here my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, like that's a part of the country I've never been to, so like it's honestly super interesting to have you on and kind of talk about that, because I think a big thing for Scoped is, and the reason I started it was like Western Canada I think collectively gets like not the recognition that we deserve, and maybe some of the tours that are planned, like the biggest thing growing up in Winnipeg was like North American tour, and then it dips up into Toronto and then dips right back down.
I can almost guarantee that it is significantly worse out here than it ever would be.
Yeah. So yeah, like maybe just like, and that's something I'm noticing too with interviewing some guests. It's just like understanding distance for bands or for booking people as far as trying to plan stuff out. So before we get into that, let's just kind of, again, get the full kind of scope of things for you. So you started going to shows, you're around 13 years old. Did you pick up some instruments and stuff and start playing in bands as well?
Yeah, so actually the same person that got me involved in going to shows, I played in like my first band with. I got a drum kit whenever I was like 12. and we did like a cover of "Smells Like Teen Spirit" at our school talent show. And we started a band, and that was that. Just did some like we didn't really do much. Like we did that one cover, and then just like jammed, how people do whenever you're 12 years old and 13.
Right.
And then like I ended up joining a band whenever I started high school, and that was fun and all. And then ever since then, I've been in more bands. I'm currently in like 2.5 bands, I guess, kind of 3 if you round it up.
Sure. Is the half band like you're filling in? Because that's how it was for me with some bands. I'm like, well, I'm just kind of filling in, and then eventually it's a full-time thing.
2 bands I'm in. Like I'm part of the band. The other band is a band that I'm in, but we kind of like recently just recorded 2 songs.
Okay.
And it's just kind of a recording thing right now. We'll probably play shows eventually. And then I filled in on drums for like an emo, they call it, band.
Gotcha.
So that was fun because I never played anything like that before. So that was pretty cool. And they were friends of mine. Like the 2 people I was playing with are in my other band. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So kind of when did you start kind of booking shows and taking a larger step forward as far as like giving back to your scene in a way?
2016.
Okay.
I was in a band, a hardcore band, or like a straight edge band, like hardcore. It was like a lot of people said it sounded like Think I Care. So like like Think I Care, it's like that, I guess. And we did like a tape release show, and we're like, let's just do it ourselves. There was no one else doing all ages shows in Charlottetown at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There was like a group, but they weren't doing as much as like we would have. Well, obviously it wasn't enough for us to be like, hey, let's do a show, because like that maybe just wouldn't have happened. So we were just like, let's do it ourselves. We ended up doing it and had like a really good number of kids come out. So me, one of the other guys in the band, and another friend of ours who helped us organize the whole thing, we recorded the tape that we were releasing. He said, why don't we try and do this like once a month for the next year? And we were like, yeah, sure, why the hell not? Like it seemed a lot easier than we thought it was. So we did another one like the next month, and then we just kind of kept going and did one every month. And eventually what we saw was we had maybe like 70 kids out at our first show, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And the next show, a little bit less, and then it kind of started to go less. So we kind of figured we may be doing them like too often. So like once a month maybe was like just a little bit too much.
Sure.
We're going to start picking and choosing what ones they wanted to go to. So we ended up finding a new venue that was willing to have us and was affordable. And we basically do shows like 6 times a year now. So like once every 2 months, or like we'll do 2 in a row and take like a month off or something. And maybe we'll do one in a basement too, just to kind of like on top of the 6 that we already do at this venue. Cool. The venue we have lets us use it 6 times a year. So so we just been doing it like that since, and like right now it's just me and my girlfriend kind of doing it, and we have fun. We booked a lot of cool bands, and have a lot of met a lot of people from like out of the Maritimes too. So like Adam from Both Shoulders.
Yeah, and like maybe we can kind of go to that portion of just talking about distance between, because like it's a no-brainer. Like there are people that I've met in like the States who are like, oh, just rip down with Cold Shoulder for this show or this festival. And like Calgary and Toronto are in like 2, like it's a 3-day drive alone. But even getting out to where you are, that's probably 3 more days from Toronto area.
From here to Alberta, we have my girlfriend's sister lives in Calgary.
Okay.
We were out there years ago. Beautiful spot. It's a 5-day drive to Alberta from PEI.
Yeah.
And that's if you drive like at least 10 hours a day. It's a long drive.
Yeah, it's a crazy continental week of work just behind the wheel. So like that's something that I can always appreciate more with certain either promoters or bands in more challenging geographical scenes. Because, I got into hardcore growing up in Winnipeg, and, for Canada alone, like it was very rare to get any bands from Toronto or the Ontario area overall, just because, that's a, 2-day excursion, and then the next thing is Regina, and then at the time it's like that's still 8 hours.
That's I think I noticed that with a lot of bands though, kind of especially from here. Like bands from out east, we never see like our friends' bands travel really any further than Ontario because that drive from like southern Ontario to like anywhere like that would be like a place you'd want to play like in Manitoba or like Saskatchewan is like such a far drive.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like you don't really see too many bands from out here going across the country and then coming back because it's just a little too much. Like it's a 5 day drive alone just to get to Alberta. Like
Mhm.
it's excruciating, and that's just driving straight through. So like you would need at least a month, like probably like at the very least like
You have to play
two or
like
three
half
weeks. Like
a month's worth of shows, probably.
yeah, like it's a huge country, and that's like makes it very challenging for a lot of bands. I would think so.
Yeah. And like I have seen it before. Like I think it was 20. I'm trying to see if I can get this year right. There was two bands. Shout out Blessing and Lopsaria. They're both from the Toronto area.
Yeah.
They drove out all the way to Alberta just to play Edmonton and Calgary, and then drove all the way back. So,
Yeah, Blessing played here. I think it was last summer actually too. There,
oh, okay, yeah,
we both put them in a basement with Botfly.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
Botfly, great band, great dudes.
yeah. And I think, like, obviously, like, not every band has the financial, like, it's not even a financial thing. It's like logistically, like, does someone have a van? Does someone have, all the gear? Like, getting merch for those runs. But I do notice that bands who make that, who make a move like that, to go to maybe a niche part of the country, or do kind of on paper a crazy idea as far as like playing two shows in Alberta and coming back. But for me, like that stuck with me, and that's a band I'll respect probably for the rest of my life.
Exactly, and we're very much like that here. Like when a band like takes the time to like travel this way and like play a show to like however many kids, could be like between 20 to 100 kids, like take that risk to come here and play. Like we really appreciate that a lot. Like we'll like if they ever want to come back, we're usually like come back anytime. Like we'll book it, we'll make it happen.
Right.
Yeah. And it's like here, it's like a lot of bands want to play in Halifax because Halifax is like the big urban center of the Maritimes. So a lot of bands come to play Halifax and they want to see their friends there that they might know within like the community.
Sure.
And they're just kind of like, well, we want to go out there. It's like we know it's beautiful out in the eastern part of Canada, so we want to go just kind of like as a vacation. Like, and they'll play like Fredericton, St. John, Moncton. They'll come over here to Charlottetown, which like I don't know if you know anything about PEI, but there's like the Confederation Bridge. Like people know the Confederation Bridge. The toll is almost $50.
Wow.
So like
okay.
just to cross the bridge is nearly $50. So like coming over here, people are like, oh, they got to pay the bridge toll. That's a big fee, and a lot of bands don't know that whenever they come over here.
Yeah, so they feel slighted in a little way, unknowingly.
It sucks. Like, yeah, so a lot of bands like they're kind of like, it's not worth the bridge toll, blah blah blah. And I get that because it's fucking expensive. Like if it costs nothing to go across that bridge, I would be like going like to Halifax constantly to see friends over there and stuff like that. But like it's such a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like bands will come here and play like St. John, Fredericton, Moncton. They'll come here, and then they'll play like Halifax, and then they'll drive back to like Montreal or Toronto or wherever they come from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just to get to Montreal alone from Charlottetown. My band WARSH, we toured last year. We did 5 dates. We went for a week, and it just to get to Montreal is a 12-hour drive. Pretty much. It's like between 10 and 12. Like if you're stopping, it's 12. If you just boot it and don't have to piss the whole time, it's 10.
Right.
Like just to get to Montreal for the first show, you know what I mean? Like it's pretty far. Like New Brunswick is a pretty big province. Like
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think like going back to what you were saying about like bridges and unexpected fees, like I think Canada overall maybe is on the low side of that. But I remember like I went down to Chicago to play. I was filling in for a band.
Yeah.
We were playing in oh man, what was that town? Somewhere in Illinois. But like we were going through that state. I'm like, we had to hit so many like just like tolls, and just like, okay, everyone's like trying to rally together like change to get it. And maybe in the States it's more common, but Definitely not a thing in Canada, at least that I know of.
Yeah, like that's America's like very privatized country. So
Sure.
like
Yeah.
the opportunity there is to make money driving on a road, I'm sure they'll take it. But whenever we were on tour last summer, we didn't really notice too much, honestly.
Hmm.
Just that fucking bridge, man. It's just getting off the damn island. That's how they get you here. They trap you and then you can't afford to leave.
Right. Yeah. Um, and so as far as like a recommended touring route, if there maybe is a band from like Eastern Canada or maybe in the West, because that's definitely the majority of our audience who's probably listening is people out here in Western Canada and maybe in the Pacific Northwest. But if there's a band who's like, yeah, we would love to come out here, what would be your recommended, touring route, so to speak?
Let me think. If you wanted to break it up a little bit better, what I would almost recommend doing is like you would want to start. So Fredericton's the closest to the Quebec border, so you could start with like a show in Fredericton, drive to Moncton, which is about an hour and a half away. It's closer to PEI and kind of closer to Halifax, I think. So from Moncton, you could probably go to Halifax, and then sort of on your way back, you could stop at Charlottetown. There's a ferry from the northern part of like mainland. That's kind of like the northern part of mainland Nova Scotia that goes to PEI. It's free to take over, and then if you were driving through New Brunswick, you would take the bridge back, and it's cheaper to take the bridge back. It's free to get here, but it costs money to leave. But the bridge is cheaper to take than the boat, but you can take the boat over and then take the bridge back, and then you would stop in like St. John, or you could switch St. John and Fredericton and go back to Quebec. You could stop in Sydney, Nova Scotia if you wanted. Their scene's pretty great, really nice people. It's a bit out of the way because it's in Cape Breton Island, kind of in the northern part of the island. But yeah, those are the real places you could stop. If you had the money, you could stop in St. John's in Newfoundland. But that's like, we think it's hard to get people here, but like Newfoundland, it's much, much more difficult. Like it's really expensive to go to Newfoundland. Like
Yeah.
I've never been there, and I'm like on the East Coast. Like that's how insane it is. Like to fly there, it probably costs you just as much to fly from like here to Western Canada.
Yeah. Wow.
And if you don't fly, you got to take a ferry, which is really expensive, and it's a long ferry ride, or you got to drive all the way through like New Brunswick and like that Quebec area with like Baie-Comeau and all that shit. I think, I don't know, but yeah, you got to drive like all through there into Labrador, and then take a small ferry, and then drive to like the southern tip of Newfoundland. Like it's an insane like trip just to get there.
Yeah, and we did a podcast with someone who's originally from Nova Scotia, and he was just saying like flying wise, it's like it would be a lot more efficient, but like to drive, it's like just crazy, roads around islands and whatnot to get around. Because
yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. I was gonna say like So the guy I'm mentioning, his name is Evan, and he moved down to Boston, like as he was kind of getting into hardcore. Do you find that you get more US bands that kind of come up from that area, or even people that just want to come up to go to shows, or not as much?
We don't get too many US bands this way. We get a lot of Canadian bands. I would assume it would have to do with like the visas and stuff like that.
Sure.
We get a lot of bands from like Ontario and Quebec that want to come this way. We get a lot of bands from Halifax that come up like regularly that we're really good friends with. And a few bands in like New Brunswick. It's weird. Like we're like, to drive to New Brunswick is quicker to drive to than like Halifax and Nova Scotia. But like we're a lot closer with the Halifax scene than we are with like New Brunswick, like as a whole. I've seen it's really weird. Like I got to meet some people whenever one of my old bands did a few shows in New Brunswick a few years ago, and that was really nice to kind of like build that friendship with those people. But like still, I don't know a whole lot about like what's going on in New Brunswick as much as I do in like Halifax or even like Montreal and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then as far as like, can you talk a little bit about like the, maybe not like the most popular band genre that you're kind of seeing as far as like in your scene right now, but can you kind of give a little bit of context for like what you're seeing trending right now, because I definitely know that there are some bands that started in certain years and they've had the same sound, but as far as like newer bands, there's a little bit of themes. So
Yeah.
and if there's any bands that you want to, you know, shout out or give some light to, please do.
We like on PEI specifically, like my bands are all like hardcore punk bands, like D beat, like shit like that. Like I like playing D beats on the drums. It's fun.
Right.
There's a lot of bands like that in Halifax too. So Fragment, they're an excellent band. Not the Fragment that is like a hardcore band from Toronto. It's a different Fragment.
Oh, okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, I figured there might be some confusion.
Yeah.
There's a band from Halifax called Bougie Boys, who
Oh,
are
okay.
amazing. They're like blowing up all over the damn place. Like Iggy Pop puts them on his podcast and shit on BBC Radio. Like they played out in Vancouver with like I forget, I think it was the Spits.
Wow.
They're incredible, and like those guys, like a bunch of the guys in that band are in Fragment, and then they're in Alienation. There's another amazing band. Like all those guys just play in like every band ever.
Sure. Yeah.
Botfly, they're like a noise like band, like a noise rock band from Halifax. Great, great guys. Really good music. Like the sweetest guys. Like they'll come up here like at least twice a year to play for us. Like and like it's not on their tour. They're just like we go up there like specially to play Charlottetown because like it's like going home, and like some of the members are either from here or live here.
Right.
So it's really nice. They get to kind of come up and go to the beach and eat Richard's fish and chips on the North Shore.
Right. Is that like the go-to food for bands? Like I know, like, you know, generally in like punk and hardcore music, there's like a skew in the vegan or vegetarian area. So I'm kind of curious, like, like I'm vegetarian, but like the one thing that I'll like not, I'm not claiming vegetarian. I just eat vegetarian 99% of the time, but like good fish and chips, like that's kind of like my vice or my weakness. So I'm curious what the food scene out there is as well.
The food is excellent here. They call us PEI like Food Island. It's kind of, you know, whatever, but there's a lot of really good restaurants for like how small the province is. Like the province only has a population of like 140,000 people.
Yeah.
Like
wow.
the whole province, like it's very small. It's like the size of a small city, but like an entire province. So like for the amount of people we have here, we have a lot of good restaurants. And that Richard's place I was talking about, it's like hands down like the best fish and chips on the island. Like it's incredible. You go into like the national park, like on the North Shore with like all the dunes and stuff, and it's like on a harbor, like within the national park.
Oh wow, cool.
Amazing. They catch everything right out of that harbor and they fry it there. It's so fucking good.
Yeah.
So that's like the go-to spot when bands come here in the summer.
Yeah.
You know, it's tough. If you want fish and chips, go to Richard's.
Sounds good. Yeah. So kind of sidestepping, kind of going back to what we were talking about with you putting on shows there. You mentioned earlier that there's like a lot of like younger kids who are like going to shows.
Absolutely.
So maybe talk about that, like how, obviously, like I think anyone in hardcore, like no one would say that that is a bad thing. That is an absolutely great thing. Like
it's what's really helped us keep it alive here over the last like year and a half. We had the show Botfly played it actually. Wasn't last year, the one before in like October, and these two kids came out to that show. The next show there were 5. The next show there were 10. The next show there were like 15, and the next show there were 20. And now like I can't even keep track anymore. Like
right.
It's incredible. Like we went from putting on shows where maybe 20 people, 25 people would show up, and it's like, oh fuck, this isn't good. And then all of a sudden, like we're averaging like probably between like 60 and 80 people at a show now. And like PEI is a small place, like might not sound that impressive, but like our venue's not too big, so like you fit 60 to 80 people like crammed into a room. Like it's packed, and like we've had upwards like 100 and like maybe just over 100 people at some of our shows, like at least one. It's great. And like the kids, they're all like in high school or junior high, like 7 to 9, like they're starting bands. It's amazing. And like, they're cool bands. Like these kids are punk and they're like, they just want to rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, like some of the bands out here, like shout out Set Straight, Bitter, like some of the younger guys, like the fact that it's their first band, it just makes me so embarrassed to like even think about the very first bands I was a part of.
Am so on board with that statement. Like these kids, like there's one band here specifically, they're called Dead Name. It's like 3 queer kids started this band, like they're 14, 15, and 16 years old, and they started like this like punk, like it's so weird to describe. It's like heavy, but it's like punk, and it's like kind of like jazzy almost. Like
Okay.
Cool. It's really cool, and like they just want to rock and roll. That's all there is to it. And like 2 of those people started a new band called like Dibs, and it's
like Dibs, like that's mine. Dibs.
Like kind of like it's an acronym. I can't remember what it is, but it's
okay. Dibs is pretty sick though. That's a great band name.
They're awesome. The kids are great, and like they're switching up instruments and they're recording like with their iPhone and putting it on Bandcamp, and it's great. The mentality of the kids out here is like so punk rock. It's freaking great. Like
yeah,
just record it. Doesn't have to sound good. Blow it out. Makes up for how shitty it sounds anyway, and just post it on Bandcamp. Make some tapes. Sell some tapes. You know.
That's almost backwards in like I at least when I was like first playing in bands, it was so like I remember being so meticulous in the first like, oh, it needs to sound this way, or it needs to, you know, be this level of production or whatever. And you know, like now that I've skewed more into like the hardcore, like authentic style of recording, like there is still some of that, but like like the fact that, you know, growing up in an age where it's so like immediate, like record on my phone and then just like throw it up on Bandcamp like in the next hour is something to be commended.
It's awesome. Like we like with my bands, like I'm in like I said, like kind of 3 bands, like 2 bands and then like 2 half bands. My band Antibodies, we just put out a new LP like a month ago, and like we just put out the tapes. Like we recorded that ourselves in like our guitar player's basement. We call it Terry's Temple, just because it's hilarious. And we recorded it ourselves, mixed it ourselves. It sounds like absolute shit. It's really way too loud, but it's like perfect for the kind of stuff that we play.
For sure.
And that the people who like our kind of music listen to. Like when I hear a band that sounds like our band, and if it's like recorded way too well and it's too polished, I'm like, oh, this would sound so much better if it was like blown out to shit and like not so good. Like, I'm in another band called WARSH.
How do you spell that? You've said that a couple times, and I'm just trying to figure out the spelling.
WARSH. So TJ from Antibodies, who like I'm in Antibodies with TJ. He said to me one day, he's like, I want to start a punk band and call it WARSH. And I was like, that's hilarious, because WARSH in PEI terms is like wash, but it's like something old people would say. It'd be like wash, like gotta go wash the windows, or like wash the potatoes before you throw them in the pot. Like
that's
shit
like
like
in
that.
Their accent.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a dialect thing here. It's like, oh, gotta go put a wash in the machine, like that kind of thing. Like, so he said, I want to start a band and call it WARSH. I was like, that is so funny. Like, we totally got to do that. So
wow, that's very on the nose. I like that.
Yeah, so it's me and TJ from Antibodies, my girlfriend Sophia, and she does vocals. She's great. It's her first band she's ever been in. Like, she has a blast. And then our bass player Rosanna. We put out a tape in November. We recorded that ourselves, mixed it ourselves. Same deal. Kind of sounds like shit, but it's like perfect for the kind of thing that we do. And people like enjoy that sort of thing, like in like hardcore punk, I guess, with like the D-beat kind of thing going on. So.
Yeah.
And then the other band, Abraxas, we recorded that ourselves with like 3 microphones. Like we set up a SM58 on the guitar, an SM50 or SM57 on the guitar, 58 on the bass, and 1 SM58 on the drums. And just did it that way, and it sounds pretty all right. And I did vocals in that one too, so that was a lot of fun. And yeah, those are like the 3 bands I'm playing. The other one is like an emo band, but like we did the recordings all ourselves. Rosanna, who's in More, she's like the one who wrote everything. She's mixing it all, and yeah, it's fun. Like, you don't have to like for it depends on the type of music you're playing, I guess. But like the stuff that we play, like you don't have to spend thousands of dollars in a studio to record. Like you can just have a friend with an interface, like every meme that meme 666 posts with like Pro Tools and just like just record
It's very
that
true.
in
Yeah.
your basement. And it's like you don't have to know how to mix very well. Just like talk to people and find out some tips and research things online and just make it work and put out some tape.
Plus, there's like so many ways nowadays to like get certain like things on the band agenda to be done. Like you don't have someone who's a graphic designer and need a band logo, like go on Fiverr. Like,
Yep.
like you
Like,
message someone on Instagram for all I care.
Yeah. The mentality I find out here is very DIY.
Yeah.
Like a lot of like the artwork that we'll do for our bands, like for WARSH, like Rosanna will draw the artwork. For Antibodies, like we'll get friends from Halifax to make it. Like our friend Steve made the artwork for our new record. He's in Fragment and Bougie Boys and Alienation and all these bands from Halifax. So like we're all really close with them. So he did the artwork for us. And like any shirts and stuff, like we started printing our own shirts now too. Like it's like I got a little setup in the room behind the camera, and like that's where we make shirts now. And it's fun. Like there's a very DIY mentality I find out here within the punk scene. Even the kids, like they're going to Value Village and picking up shirts and like spray painting on them, and fucking going to Value Village and buying tapes and dubbing over them. Like it's pretty funny.
Wow, I never like I've seen that where bands have like run out of merch on tour, and then they're just getting like Hanes white tees and then spray painting. But like the doubling over tapes at a thrift store that's on some next level shit.
I swear to God, like, okay, Cody Gugu, he's from Halifax. He's
legendary last name.
Well, yeah, it's like an indigenous it's an indigenous last name. I'm not sure if it's like a tribe or not, but he's like one of the best writers in like punk out here, and he just like makes a band, records it. He'll go to like Value Village and buy a bunch of tapes and just dub them himself, white out marker, and like you finish the tape and then you're listening to like Dolly Parton, like it's like it's not totally uncommon with that style and like that like this way. Like we did it with the Abraxas tapes too, and it's great. Like it's just very DIY.
And I think like especially learning that at such a young age is so crucial, like to like make shit happen on your terms, because I honestly can't, like there are other genres I guess that have elements of that, but not to the same degree, I feel.
Yeah, like it's nice to be able to do things yourself and be like a self-sufficient sort of band where you're doing your artwork in-house, you're doing your recording in-house, you're doing your mixing in-house, you're not mastering because it doesn't matter half the time. You're making your shirts in-house, you're printing patches in-house, like you're doing all these things yourself. You don't have to spend money outside of that to like make something, you know what I mean? Like we can put out an LP with 10 songs, record it ourselves, it costs us nothing. Order tapes online and literally like sell them for $5, and we're still like able to fund the next tape like out of that. We're not like broke, trying to scrounge up money to like pay ourselves back for doing a run of 100 tapes. Like you can do a lot of things yourself, and like there's a lot of resources out there to learn how to do those things. And
for sure. I think like anyone who's like, oh, but I don't know how to use Photoshop, or I don't know how to like, play, record something, like there's a thing called Google, there's a thing called YouTube. Like that's where majority of people are learning everything from that to like how to change oil in their car. So it's,
oh my God, absolutely. I changed my oil in my car, so that can't really need. But like, in Photoshop and all that kind of stuff, like, if you talk to anybody who knows how to use Photoshop and you say like, if you say to someone who uses Photoshop, you say, oh, I don't really know how to use that. It's like, well, I didn't either. Like you just got to go. You like with that sort of thing, you just got to do it, figure it out. Yeah. And eventually like you become so well versed in all these things, you can do everything for your band. Like it's great. Like, I don't know. We got our last record mastered by Will Killingsworth, but that's like the only thing we've really done outside of that. Like if we want to include pictures, like our friends we'll be like, yeah, use the pictures all you want. Like, if, like some people be like, yeah, I'll do an artwork for you real quick for your new tape, whatever, no problem. That's
Yeah.
great. Like, you know,
Yeah, and especially like, like I've mentioned it a couple times on the podcast, but like, allowing people to, essentially like build their creative, careers within their music community, I think is so important. Because
oh
for
my
me,
God, yeah.
like I was like, oh, I'm gonna start filming bands. Like I had no aspirations to get it to the level that it is today, but it was like just discovering a passion for me. But if someone was like, no, Spencer, you can't film this show, or I don't want this to be filmed, like largely that was accepted from the origin, and then it's just exploded. So I'm sure it's the same for
That's
people that want to get
exactly,
together and play music.
yep. That's exactly how I got into doing like film stuff myself, like filming bands and shows, and like working that into like doing stuff for like businesses and like doing weddings and shit like that. Like that's where it all started basically.
So
We have this like running joke here that it's like if you play a show in Charlottetown, it's like the best documented show you'll ever have in your life because there's like 5 photographers at every show snapping pictures.
wow,
Like,
okay, yeah, I didn't know. Are there any archivists that you want to shout out as far as photography or videography?
Paul Atwood, he's amazing. He lives in Halifax now. He's originally from Nova Scotia, but he lived here for a few years. He is like the greatest dude ever. Like snaps pictures at every show. Like he always lets us use them for stuff, and like he will always take pictures of everything he's at. Like he'll go to shows and take pictures just cause. Like, Sophia, like my girlfriend, she's doing the same thing. Like we're using some of her photos on the new like Antibodies artwork. Haley Frail in Halifax, she does a lot of photos for a lot of bands over there in New Brunswick. Who else?
You're doing a little bit of video yourself, you said.
Yeah, I do a lot of photo at shows. Like every time we put on a show here, like me and my girlfriend, one of us will take photos of the band. It's like we both have a camera. Like we both take photos. So like if she's watching the door, I'll run in and snap pictures. If I'm watching the door, she'll run in and snap pictures. Like if I'm doing sound, she'll run in and snap pictures, and we'll just like post them after.
Yeah.
And have like pictures of every band that plays. Like that's something that we always try to do is snap photos of every band that plays our shows.
Yeah.
And they like, and especially with the younger bands, like they can use that right for material. We don't want anything for it. Like just use it.
Yeah. Like, and I think that's so crucial, especially for like a smaller scene to, have some kind of documentation that you can post that, like probably one of the first things I'm going to do after this podcast is go check out those photos and relive some of those moments of shows. Cause like it gives you a, like a snapshot, for lack of a better term, of how things are.
Absolutely. It's really important like to have that, and like it works as a tool for like getting bands here too. Like if a band knows that they're going to come here and it's going to be like 16 people taking pictures of your band, like it's nice to have, right? And nobody usually wants money for it here. Like they just snap them and here you go. Yeah. Like, and it's not wrong to like shoot bands for money, obviously, but like a lot of the time here we'll just take them and be like, do whatever you need with them. If you want to put them like on a J card, go for it. Like,
yeah, I've always said, like, I totally agree. Like, it's like if someone's trying to have that as their full-time thing, shooting bands, like, go for that. I support that. Yep. I also think that someone who's doing it for free, like, that's how certain creatives can kind of, one up one another in a sense.
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
Oh well, like we like Gabby, but we like Troy does just as good a job, and Troy's a good dude and he's doing it for free. So
yeah. And it's like it's important to support artists and stuff too, but like it's punk rock. Like it's not, no one's like trying to go broke like playing punk music. That's always been my mentality. Like I'm not trying to go broke. I'm just not trying to like, not trying to get rich off it either by any means. Like just if you can make a punk band and break even at the end of it all, or only lose a few $100, you're doing great. So
yeah, 100%. You mentioned earlier just about like meme pages, and this was something that at least when Adam introduced me, and for anyone who's watching the video podcast and they're like, okay, I've never met Brett before, but I feel like I've seen him, is you're an actual like music meme.
I'm just an all around meme. I think I was the meme of the month in September 2016 on Reddit. Actually,
Wow.
I know. It's really weird to me. I don't use Reddit, but whenever I saw that, I was like, oh wow. Or it was in like it was like nominated or some shit. I don't know.
Right. And the meme we're talking about, and I'd love for you to give me a little like background story. Is the name a band and I'll let you into the club guy.
Yeah.
And I saw that years ago, but like when I learned that, you know, that's someone not. I always think it's cool, like, oh, so and so is Canadian, like that's, you know, 1 point for me. But like the fact that we're sitting down and doing this podcast, and you know the conversation's going well, that is just. I need to know more, Brett.
Yeah. And that was funny with Cold Shoulder too. Like whenever they're like somebody mentioned it and they were like, you fucking kidding me? Like, and then it was like we took a photo together and all that shit. And I had a roommate who like was friends with a lot of people in the music scene, and we would have band sit or place all the time. He would always tell them, and then they'd be like, oh my god, like you're my friend's favorite meme. It's the Persuadable Bouncer meme is the name of it, I guess.
Yeah, that's the official name. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a 4-panel meme. Anyway, the background is Sophia and I, like my girlfriend, we were going out for dinner, and I looked like a bouncer. And she's like, stand in front of that door. I was like, okay. She's like, you look like a bouncer. I was like, all right, take a picture. So I crossed my arms like this, had some glasses on, and she took the photo. She's like, now open the door. I'm going to make a Twitter, like a tweet about it. And I opened the door, and you know, and then she made it was like, I don't know what it was some artist, and the original tweet was I don't know how you can hate from outside the club when you can't even get in, or something like that. And then a friend of mine who had like a Twitter account that had like 8,000 followers or something, he started the fucking like 4-panel thing, and since then it just like exploded. It was big on Twitter for a little bit, and then it died off, and then it really took off like everywhere else. Like 2016, 2017, and then, like it always resurges like once in a while, like it is right now. Everybody's like, oh, should me picture your car, I'll let you know if you're in or not. Or like, you know, I get like people from high school that were like weird, or like, you know, not weird, but like people I didn't really hang out with being like, oh, this just got posted in like car race memes New Brunswick or something like that, and I'm like, all right, cool. Sure, you know.
So like your girlfriend took a photo of that, and then it was like you didn't think anything of it. You're just like, oh, this is a funny thing for the two of us. She might post it, and that would be it.
Yeah, and then that friend with that Twitter account with like 8,000 followers posted it, and then it just kind of spiraled from there.
Yeah, which like 8,000 followers is like it's a sizable audience, but it's not like, oh, like a million. Like it was slowly but surely.
Yeah, like he had some people on there that had like more significant following, and then they picked it up and shit like that. And then it died for a while, but then it got posted on like Facebook, and then it got posted on like some substantially large Instagram accounts with like millions of followers. People were like, hey, isn't that you? And I'm like, yes, it is. And they're like, oh my god, it's on this awesome meme page that I like. And I scroll through their page and I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And I think the aspect of the longevity of that, because I'm always obsessed with how things, you know, create virality and, you know, spread around the internet. But I think the thing that has the extra sauce aspect of it is that it's a give and take versus like I forget what movie that is, but it's like you can own, like it's talking about like the one day of the year that they can post that, or like the Justin Timberlake, like it's gonna be May thing.
May,
But that can, you know, anybody who can post that, it's like, oh, now we're playing a game versus it's just like, oh, here's a funny meme, so to speak.
Yeah, like it pops up and I get a chuckle and I'm like, oh my god, it's doing it again. Like, holy fuck, this thing's sticking around, it's not going anywhere. Like,
right.
It hasn't like affected me negatively or positively or anything. It's just like funny whenever it pops up, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like again, like fuck,
yeah,
it's crazy.
And yeah, like that's interesting to hear too. That is like it just like it's kind of, you know, it's passive. Like nothing's really, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure you haven't been hit up by like a bunch of places to like talk about it. It's just like, but at the same time, it's not like, oh, like you're, the news reporter who had like a fish hit her in the face or something like
No,
that.
I've done maybe two interviews about the whole thing. One of them was on High Trash Media, which is the bass player of Antibodies, who has turned that into a tape label. He used to do interviews. He was the first person to interview me. We're friends anyway, so it was
Right.
just shit. And then I can't remember if I actually did this one, but it was like a student at the college here, Holland College. They were part of the journalism program, and they wanted to interview me. And I don't know if they ever actually did. They wanted. So I've done at least one interview about it, and it was like one of
So
my
this
really.
could be second or third time you've like talked about it in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's on a punk and hardcore thing, so that's cool because that's
Yeah.
what I. So yeah.
So you said that your buddy put it on a tape cover. And that's the only like medium that you've seen it like physically manifestate.
I don't think it's been on a tape cover. It's been on has it been on a tape cover? We've made like bullshit tape covers with our bands just for shits and giggles, but I don't know if it's actually ever made it to a tape cover. Maybe it has, and I just can't remember.
Yeah.
But like, it's definitely like it's a big funny thing around here. Like people are like, "Oh, I know the bouncer meme," and like the kids are like, "Yeah, that's freaking funny." Like, "Oh my god, you're that guy," and blah blah blah. Like it gets shared within circles, like in the Maritimes, and then the kids from here will pipe up to be like, "Oh my god, that's Brett from Charlottetown! Like, you can't believe you didn't know that," and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty funny. Like the kids are all right around here. So
Yeah. No, that's super cool, and I'm glad that we got to peel the curtain back a little bit about it.
of course, it's just like a weird thing that it just shows up once in a while, and I just get a little chuckle out of it. So
Right. Cool. So going back to just like the geographical nature of where you are, because honestly, it's been really eye-opening for me to kind of hear, how things are structured and, like some of the, the challenges that you face. But I think it's really cool. Like, I think especially anyone in our genre, like hearing 60, 80 kids as an average is still like, that's still a really great show. Like,
yeah, it's nice. And like we always joke with our friends in Halifax about it too. Like they get great numbers out of their shows too, but we always joke like the median age there is like 26 and here it's like 16.
Right.
So we'll bring our friends over from Halifax to the place. There's so many goddamn kids at these shows, like it's insane. And we're like, yeah, it's like it's great. Like we would be fucked if we didn't have them. So
yeah, and arguably like people who are like 15, 16, 17 probably, like if you're going out to play there, they probably have more dispensable income because they're not living on their own. They're not, having to pay a bunch of bills, and they're probably not as jaded musically for like, oh, well, I'm not going to watch this band. It's just like, they're just stoked.
It depends on like if they actually have a job, I guess. Like a lot of them don't have jobs. It's hard to like find work here sometimes, especially if you're younger.
Mm-hmm.
But like they always come out, like it's consistent. Like they're really like, I remember when I was their age, like the one show that would happen every month or two was like the thing I always look forward to the most. And to have that happening right now for the first time that I can remember since I was that young, like I've been around for 10 years here, and like one way or another, like going to shows, or 13 years. Holy shit, it's been like half my life. Going to, or like, like helping out or doing shows. And like, I can't remember a time when there were this many kids this excited about punk music in Charlottetown. It's incredible. Like I friggin' like, and we're nice to them. Like we're not mean to them. Like we interact, we record them, like we hang out with them. If we run into them in the street, we'll like chit chat. Like I'm like twice the age of some of these kids, and like we'll like run into them in the street and have a little chat. Like we're nice to them. We're not mean. Like we're not like, oh, we're older than you and like you're just a kid, blah blah blah. Because like these kids are cool. Like they want to rock, and like we want to give them the rock.
100%,
so, like,
yeah.
And that's it. That's all there is to it. Like they just want to go to shows. And I remember being like that whenever I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember trying to talk to the promoters back then, and sometimes they would, and sometimes they brush you off. And like we try to not be like that now. Sure. So it's good to like talk to these kids and get them excited about the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think that's like so crucial, like you said, for like smaller communities. Like, you know, maybe you're in a like, I always mention California, and I don't mean to knock on it, but I think it's like, it's very like they have it set. Like, I don't want to say it's privileged or whatever, but like the fact that so many great bands are in that scene, and, you know, shows can happen all year round. And, you know, like, arguably some people have to choose, like, do I go to this show at Chain Reaction or Program, or, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, and that's how we feel about like Ontario, Montreal, and stuff too. Like,
Sure,
we don't have
yeah.
much here. Like, we're the only people who really do like all ages shows here in that style of music. Everything else is a bar show. But if you go to like even Halifax, like there's a few different scenes within like that punk and hardcore and metal community. You know what I mean? Like, we only really have like the all ages scene and then like a bar scene. Those are the two things really. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
But like, I'm sure you can attest to like all ages shows being like, oh, sorry, excuse me, being super crucial for like, you know, because that was very similar to when I was first going to shows. It was like I was already like 18, like going to hardcore shows. So I was like 18, 19 already. So I could get into whatever venue I wanted to. But, you know, like all ages, like venues like were very few and far between. So like usually it was at a 18 plus venue. And then when I moved out to Calgary, it was like, man, there are young kids here. And, you know, if we have it at Dickens, which is 18 plus, there's like a significant 20 to 30 person gap as far as attendance.
Yeah, here it's very similar to that. For a little while, it was more like if you were coming to Charlottetown, it was best to do a bar show because like the all ages scene was really getting this whenever we started doing it. So if you wanted to come here and like make it worth it by any means, like it would be good to do a bar show because like there would usually be people out. The bar scene here is like more of like metal now.
Sure.
And the all ages scene is like very punk. So like whenever we do like a punk show at the bar, like it doesn't always turn out as well as if we did an all ages show. So now, like, whenever I run into bands, like, whenever WARSH played in Montreal last year, like, we're telling bands, like, we played with a band called By the Jacuzzi from Toronto, and who else? We played with Beat Test in Montreal and World Health Organization. And we told them, we're like, if you ever want to come out east, like, come on, we'll book it, we'll make it happen. Give us a weekend, because if we can do it on a weekend, then we know we can get the venue. That's the other thing here is venues are next to impossible to find if you don't have one. And like, come on a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Friday if you have to, and like we can guarantee that there will be kids to come. You know what I mean? So it's nice. Like we can talk to bands and talk it up, and you know, make it worthwhile for them hopefully. So.
And we were talking earlier, like you've mentioned a lot of like regional bands, but you know, we were talking about earlier about how a bigger tour will, you know, usually miss Western Canada and probably will miss like the Eastern provinces. But what was like maybe the last bigger show that came through that either not necessarily that you put on, but that you attended and you were like, wow, this is really crazy that X band came through?
We've had I think the last big one, Oi Polloi actually came here. They're from Scotland. They came here like a year ago. They were great. That was probably the last like big band that came here. Like they're big in the crust scene. Massacre 68 from Mexico came here. I had the chance to book them, and it was great. They're like a pretty significant punk band from Mexico. We had a Russian band called Fathom, like a Russian crust band. They were great. Like those are three bands that like I would have never really expected to come this way.
Right.
And like we've been able to kind of like build it up here so that it kind of almost makes it like it's nice because like it makes it feel like we're a bit of a destination for these bands. Other than that though, SNFU came here in like 2016. They're from Vancouver. Who else has come here? Expires played here a couple times. They're, you probably know Expire. Like I don't listen much of that kind of hardcore anymore than I used to, but they came here whenever I was really into that, and they were awesome. They played a basement. They were on tour with two other bands, and the guy who owned the house was like, "Come here, play my basement. Just you guys, come on down." So they played here. I've seen like Dead and Divine. Remember Dead and Divine?
I
They
for
came
sure
here.
know Dead and Divine.
They were here. Life Ruiner came with them once. That was a
Well,
show.
Life Ruiner is a band I haven't heard of in a long time.
Oh, I forget about them all the time.
Yeah.
I've seen some like when bands come here, they'll typically go to Halifax. So whenever I was more into like that style of hardcore, I've seen like Backtrack there. I saw like Straight from the Path, Exalt,
Yeah.
like bands like that. Will typically, if they come here, they'll go to, they'll stop in maybe like Moncton or like Fredericton and Halifax, or it's like definitely Halifax, but they'll stop in any of those places to kind of break the drive up. But we don't really get them over here as much. I did see Exalt here though too once, actually. I think of it. Yeah, so those are like the bands that we kind of get. Like we don't get any like huge name bands coming out here like
Right.
as much anymore. But like I would say the last one's definitely Oi Polloi. Yeah, they're like a big crust band, like from Scotland. They came here and people were like shitting their pants, like the punks here are like, wow, Oi Polloi coming crazy.
Yeah, and it's always cool, like especially if there's people like that are crossing a significant amount of like water to like come to another part of the world is always like I anytime I see a poster and it's like banned from like anywhere in Europe or like a weird part, it's like, well, like I might not even be into like many of these bands, but I would just want to go and
You appreciate the distance that they
show the respect that's well deserved.
It's almost like if you come from that far away, like it's worthwhile for you to like make the trek to as many stops as you can, because like what's the point of coming across the ocean to play like 5 shows, you know what I mean, like play as many as you can.
Yeah, like one thing that unfortunately due to this whole like pandemic that isn't happening is Wild Rose, which is the fest that I film here. This would have been year 5. They had booked their first UK band, Cauldron, and like anytime I talk to anyone, they like that band was going to be was highly anticipated, not only because they were would have been so far from home, but just like such a heavy band in the more metalcore scene.
Yeah.
So unfortunately that can't happen, and I hope that those guys want to rebook eventually.
Absolutely. Like I've heard of that fest. I think I was really into like Mortality Rate for a bit, and like followed them a little bit. I think they played that a few times, but yeah, we don't like that sucks. Like that really sucks. Like that this shit's going on. Like our friends Botfly from Halifax that I mentioned earlier, they had to cancel their spring tour. That really sucks for them. And like even like Antibodies, like we were gonna have a show. Was it next weekend or the weekend after to do like a little tape release show, and we had to cancel that. Like we haven't even brought it up to anyone. I don't think anybody knew it was going to happen until probably right now. But like, we can't do that, and like we have a May show booked, which might not happen. And like Antibodies and WARSH are trying to go on tour in like July or sometime in the summer, and we're like, maybe we won't be able to do that now. Like that sucks. Like.
Yeah.
It's not like we rely on it for like an income or anything. We're just like, yeah, we want to go, it's like a vacation.
I would like to enjoy summer 2020 just a little bit,
Yeah, exactly. Like even the beaches are shut down here now. Like people, like you can't go anywhere. It sucks. Like, but it's good. Like, I guess like, you don't want it to spread anymore. So like,
yeah. I think like, doing your part and just staying home or, doing what you can. And I totally agree. It would be weird. Like I totally get if a fest is still trying to be like, hey, we're a ways out, and they're still trying to promote it, but like we're still kind of uncertain of how long this thing will last. Mainly because like of how many people who aren't doing their part right now, and it's just being detrimentally, negatively influenced.
Absolutely. And like you got to be thinking ahead for that kind of thing. You got to be like, holy shit, like maybe we'll keep promoting, but like don't be surprised if we have to cancel, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And the other thing too is like, I think what sucks is that a lot of people are missing out on a lot of money right now because people can't work. So even if it does bowl over eventually, and like you can go on your tour, maybe you're not in a financial situation where you have enough money saved up to go away for a week or 2 or a month, you know what I mean? So like that's the other shitty side of things, is if it does clear up by the summer, there's going to be bands that can't tour because they don't have the funds to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
And
think that there will be a bit of a lull with that, but also like people who maybe a little like uh not schizophrenic, but like maybe hyper aware of like, oh, like just because things opened up again, like the virus is still out there, you know, there's not like they might be paranoid to only wait until like a vaccine is made. Like this is going
yeah,
down a path where we'll get lost for another hour, but
yeah,
I totally agree
yeah,
that I think that there's a hunger. Like it's very clear for anyone that I follow on social who are like just itching to get back to either playing or going to shows. But I don't think
absolutely.
it's just a light switch that just goes on after.
It's gonna be difficult. Like all I could say is just like listen to the health professionals. Like obviously, like that's important. Stay inside when they say it's good to go outside. Like it's probably good to go outside. I don't think they're going to be messing around too much, but there are going to be anxieties around that,
Yeah.
and it's going to be maybe a little bit difficult. But I think what'll happen though is people are going to get sick of sitting indoors. So as soon as they get to go ahead, people will probably be like, okay, I'm going outside.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to go for a walk at the park. I'm going to go play on the playground equipment that's shut off. I'm going to go to the skate park. Like, so that'll probably who knows? Like, it really could go either way, but there's definitely going to be a lot of anxiety.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we should probably get things wrapped up here, but I've really, really enjoyed this conversation with you, Brett. And yeah, it's been really eye-opening. And you know, my goal always with our platform is to, you know, even if it's like one or two people that, you know, somewhere down the line is like, hey, I listened to your podcast. I would love to inquire with you about setting up a show. Like that is my genuine hope for things.
Yeah. For sure.
Usually how we like to end the show is a favorite mosh story from your time in like DIY music. So I'm curious on, you know, like I've interviewed lots of people who are into metalcore and broken noses, arms, what have you, but I'm curious if there's something more so on the punk side that you can share.
Well, I don't mosh so much anymore. I kind of get out of that when I got really like I'm a big guy and there's a lot of young people. And I don't want to hurt someone. Like
You don't
I
want to
also
be the
like
boulder from Indiana Jones just toppling
no,
over everyone.
and I don't want to like I don't really like listen to that style of hardcore anymore where people do like mosh like that. So I like you kind of just naturally like I got away from it more, but like I definitely did at one point. Like I was into like the like metallic hardcore and like metalcore and shit like that. And like I remember specifically one time in Halifax, I was swinging fists and I hammer fisted some older guy right here, and like I didn't break his skull or anything, like, but I definitely like dazed him, and like they had to kind of, you know, like some people had to, we kind of had to grab him and be like, "Are you all right?" And he's, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost fell over, but like other than that, like I've accidentally like punched some friends in the face and nearly kicked some people in the face. You know, like all in good fun.
Yeah.
But like I don't want to do that anymore. Like it's not really my thing.
Yeah. I definitely like kind of shouting out some of the younger generation, like the fact that like some people who are like still in high school and they're pitting harder than most of the people in Calgary. Like that's
Yeah. That's yeah. A lot of the kids here like they just push each other around and you know have a good time. Nobody's really like crowd killing or hate moshing or fucking, you know, hardcore dancing,
right.
swinging kicks and doing spin kicks and, you know, backflips and stuff. So it's, I don't know, it's kind of nice actually. So I feel like that would probably turn a lot of people off here. So it's probably for the best.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think that there's always like certain shows where there's a variety of moshers. Like there's the crowd killers, there's the push pitters, and you know, like, you know, the two steppers.
Nobody's really trying to hurt anyone, I've always found, but you know, like there's sometimes shit happens and like I've seen people like get nearly knocked out. Like I remember one time a band played here from Newfoundland. I think they were called Weak Link. I think it was Weak Link. Great band. And they opened up with a Cro-Mags cover, and one of the guys came and just shoved the person in front of him, and it was like this younger girl, and she like fell and hurt herself, and like this show just ended. right there because everybody felt really bad. Like, that kind of shit happens, but
Yeah.
nobody wants that to happen. So like, I don't know. I saw a meme once and it was like, if you can't handle the pit, then like get out. And then like it was the red button one, and it was like, it was like if you can't handle the pit, don't come to shows. And then it was like the other button was like dwindling attendance at shows, and the guy was like sweating trying to figure out what button to push. So, I don't know. I've kind of seen that, and that's how I kind of feel now. But like, I don't know. Like there are definitely shows where that kind of shit is like totally like all right, but like I don't know, if people get hurt, and like especially at our shows, like the kids like to push each other around. But if someone got like kicked in the face at one of our shows, like I would feel terrible,
right?
And I would be like, "Fuck, what if I have to explain this now?" You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think like being self-aware of your surroundings. Like if you go to a beatdown show and like that's just the nature of that genre where people are like encouraged to like crowd kill one another. But if you're at a punk show and it's like just kind of like loosey goosey kind of punk music, like that should be like push moshing. And if you're a two-stepper, like maybe you just take that night off. I don't know.
Yeah. It depends. Like there's definitely like different things that go on at different shows for different genres of music. So
cool.
I'm not gonna try one's fun. So
sweet. Brett, well, thank you again for coming on the podcast and sharing some stories. How do people keep up with shows and your own social medias, just for the ending here?
My personal Instagram is Brett Sanderson with 5 N's on the end. We have our Facebook page for like our shows. It's Charlottetown Punk and Hardcore Shows. Very very intricate naming. And then our Instagram's like Charlottetown Hardcore, I think it is. But yeah, those are the two channels. My bands, we don't have social media, but like we're on Bandcamp. Yeah. So Antibodies, WARSH, and Abraxas for the names. You can Google them.
Yeah.
With PEI, and they'll probably show up. So yeah. But other than that, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Well, thank you again for coming on the show, and stay safe out there. And thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.